America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Agenda, any additions to? I need a motion to approve it as it is.
So
Second.
Chad and Sam. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Pose same sign. Wayne is here to talk about a specific thing on, is it the gas line pipes, Wayne?
Manufactured home park license inspections.
Okay.
Under new business.
Yeah, and rather than have him, he would rather wait until he heard what we had discussed about that, make some comments. Is that acceptable by the council after that discussion? Giving him his 2 minutes at that time?
That's fine.
yes.
Okay, consensus is, it's good. Okay. Any other visitors to be heard today? Okay, move on to the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do roll call vote. Billy?
Aye.
Jackson?
Aye.
Chad Riley?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Chad? Wolf?
Aye.
Okay, good. Then we'll move on to old business. Award for the sanitary sewer cleaning and televising. Nate?
New business.
New business.
What?
New business.
Oh, jeepers. It just jumped on me. I'll go to this other one.
Sanitary sewer.
That was
Sanitary, then,
Yep.
307, then countryside.
Okay, so the sanitary sewer contract was let. We had 4 bidders on the project. Pipe detectives out of Jamestown, North Dakota, read low at $104,761.12. That's well, it was right within our estimate, I guess, when we did takeoffs for the project, so we felt, we got good bids that way. The pipe detectives, we have had them on Winter Brothers project last year. They did all the televising there. They seem to do a fine job of that, so, we're ready to recommend that the bid get awarded to them.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jackson, seconded by Chad. Okay. Chad Wolf?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Chad Riley?
Aye.
Jackson?
Aye.
Billy?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
There's an authorized, or notice of award, I guess I'm with that one.
We're on to B, Central Basin Project Pay Application number 7.
Pay app was out of it.
Yep.
So you have pay app for, that's Winter Brothers contract on phase 2 of the Central Basin project. I don't have it in front of me, but the value is for the work that's complete to date. So this application is $99,470. Again, it's for work that's completed up to this date. Contractors reviewed it, our offices reviewed it, recommend approval. I don't know if there's any specific questions about it.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Jackson, Sam, discussion?
Are these the guys that we had the problem with all the dirt on the road?
This last week or something, did you
Yeah.
have some trouble? Probably, I mean, if it was wet out there a little bit, we could have probably had some tracking. They are doing utility work. I guess I'm not familiar with
I think,
point.
Mr. Ron's referring to dirt left in the gutters after its final grade.
Yes.
Seeding is completed along.
Was that Winter Brothers or the general?
It was one of their subs,
It's
Well,
one of
in
their
general.
but it's their,
Yeah.
they're responsible.
And it's on, so we have, we do an inspection, we put together a list of items that they need to finish up, and that is one of the items that's on there. When they get their cleaning crews down here, they'll come and pick that up and haul it out.
Well, I just know that's a ridiculous amount of spillage in the curb gutter area to leave for days on end, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll find out what the status of it is and make sure they're getting to it. I do know when they come and place that topsoil, they dump it into the street a lot of times and they pick it up and put it into the boulevard. So that's why the gutters get so, dirty, but they need to clean it up and,
Well, I scooped about 30 feet on one side, and Brock scooped about 30 feet on the other side, and,
Had 2 5-gallon buckets of just mud slop.
yeah.
And my whole issue, and it's not the end of the world, it's just an aesthetic deal. And it's like, if you're gonna be through and it must be what, 5 blocks, probably? And it's clump, and then what they did after, I had talked about it on Friday before the rain came the weekend. I think they ran a skid loader down that deal, whoever did that, on Tuesday after the rain.
Okay.
And there was so much, it just plopped over into the right of way. Well, some of the residents just kicked it back into the curb.
Okay.
And the other ones, I mean, it's large enough where the grass isn't gonna, the seed isn't gonna grow there.
because they
I
ran,
mean, it's,
they ran the skid loader along, and then it went over the curb on top of the hydro
Okay.
seed.
So one of the things that, this came up in our meeting last week, and, you know, it was discussed that, you know, I spoke with Dexter on the project. There has been some equipment issues from what I understand with Winter getting a skid loader down here. That belongs to them, but I did offer up that if it would make it easier, we have equipment that could handle this. We've got a sweeper for our skid loader, we've also got a street sweeper that we could get after it for, so. If we were to do that, we would simply need to deduct it from the contract, but I think they can take care of this.
Yeah, and you shouldn't have to do that, we'll get them we'll notify them that they're not getting it done in a timely fashion and make sure they're doing a better job out there.
Okay. Billy?
Guys,
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, is there any other complaints that we need to know about, or?
So basically, after this payment, all that's left is the 171,000 for retainage, right?
Can I see that again, Chad?
Yep, I gotta get you back here.
So their current contract price is $3,426,000,
Yeah.
and the total work in place right now is $2,362,000. So there's still a fair, at that 75% or so. So they still have quite a bit of work left to finish out there. Right now, I mean, they've got obviously built the streets for that last phase that they're on, so there'll be a decent chunk of change that they'll still.
Well, I just know they're chomping at the bit to get out of here, and I just don't want that to be forgotten.
Oh, yeah, I get
You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
Any further discussion? Okay. Chad Wolf?
Aye.
Brock?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Chad Riley?
Aye.
Jackson?
Aye.
Billy?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Countryside subdivision preliminary plan.
So to introduce this idea, or this plan, and Mitchell will have more to say about it. This is the work of several weeks and months working with developer Kelly Nielsen and his engineers over at Eric Griffin. Gone probably I think this is probably the 4th iteration of the preliminary plan after comments back and forth and minor corrections here and there. Overall, we're very happy with the plan. The developer is here tonight to speak to any questions the council may have in regards to this plan. Again, it is preliminary, it's not something that's set in stone at this point, but it does give a good general layout of what's going to happen out there in Countryside Edition as soon as possible. So,
They want some planning and zoning earlier tonight.
planning and zoning met at 6 o'clock and recommended approval to the city council. It was a 4-0 vote in support of that.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Chad Wolf. Second by Sam. Any discussion?
There was just a few things I brought up at the planning and zoning. The street coming from Juniper to Boynton, it says in there that the city wouldn't pay for that, and that's gonna cost us $200,000 to $300,000 if we have to pay for it. But according to Nate, there should be money in the TIF to take care of that, is that correct?
It is included in the TIF district. So what needs to be worked out is which party is going to complete that portion of the work.
So it's not gonna cost the taxpayers any more money.
The only instance under which it would cost them more is if we extend it further south into Boynton Avenue, to work on that intersection. It's a pretty rough intersection, so that would be outside of the bounds of that TIF district. The only other possibility that I can think of, if the TIF district would, for some reason, reach over that 6.3 million that was approved, and I suppose at that point, it could be something that would be the responsibility, but I don't see that being a realistic.
But the intersection's outside of the scope of this.
The intersection
plan.
itself is. Yeah.
So the funds are in the TIF to do the
I'm
road.
just making sure,
Yeah,
that's
to
why I
that
asked the
fund.
question.
Yep.
And then also there were some green spaces in there, and I thought at one time we discussed it when that got developed, that the developer would put park, stuff in there, but evidently that got dropped because the green space isn't gonna contain any park equipment. It's just gonna be green space, and we're gonna have to fork over $400,000 or $500,000 to put park equipment in there.
Yeah, I think the green space on the back end of the Strasser's property there, or that to the, directly to the west, is gonna be retention pond. And then there's talk about putting a park there, right? I mean, that's kind of where it's,
I think that makes the most logical location for a park. You know, what our ordinances make clear is a set aside essentially of green space,
Yeah.
not necessarily what goes in that green space.
And that's very common in communities, is the developer sets aside the land and the municipalities fund the equipment and the things that go into the park.
But it'll be graded and be grass, I mean, it's just a matter of plugging in
Be
equipment.
ready to go, it's just a matter of, right.
Yeah.
But that park equipment's expensive. And then there was the, wetlands mitigation, that's included in the TIF also, we're not gonna end up paying anything out of.
Oh, that's part of the developer's project, they've got some wetlands that they have to mitigate, within, so they'll work that out with their development plans.
Is there anything, is Kelly here, is there anything you need from the city to start moving forward?
No, just keep going through the steps, this being one of them, and Mitch and Nate have been working diligently with us, trying to get there, we're trying to work with the landowner and access point, but that's not.
That and a grading permit, he needs a grading permit, so we're working on that right now.
Does that come through us or?
No, it's something that Mitch and I have to work on.
If you want, I could just take a minute to kind of go through these a little bit with you, and I can point out some other things that we pointed out to P and Z. If you just open up to page 2, there's some general notes here, and these are just things that we asked the developer to address. So it's all out on the table, and so everybody knows kind of what we're all agreeing to. So there's some things here that just, I wanted to make sure you guys are aware how we're approaching them. Nate, maybe you wanna take the first one, the supplemental provisions in regards to the setbacks and zoning ordinance.
I think that was sheet 7, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so if you flip to page 7 quick, this general note kind of is
Yep.
better illustrated there.
So, council recall last year, after talking with Kelly, and looking at what some neighboring communities had done, we changed the setback requirements for side, I think it was just side yards for R2 residential detached structures. What you see on sheet 7, those bold items there, those are what would typically be requested in a variance. That's what's been done in other communities. I think Sioux Falls does it by variance, T and Harrisburg have done it by variance. In Lennox, our ordinance is very restrictive when it comes to variances, and I just don't think that it would meet the high threshold we have for variances. So as long as those reduced setbacks are consistent with the building code and any other codes we have out there, I think it makes sense for us to reduce that setback by ordinance rather than go the route of the variance. That's just for the R2 zone that you see there. And again, the rationale for that is more along the lines of making sure that we can get the right lot size for the right price for that base housing level that we talked about, that 220 to 250-ish range that the state sets for that affordable housing threshold.
Questions on that?
I did have one other thing I wanted to bring up, that there's no sump pump system.
Yeah, that was an item I was gonna get to, but if you go back to that page 2, The sump pump systems is a note that's further down, we can talk about that quick. Right now, you guys as regulations don't have a requirement for sump pump collection lines. We are doing sump pump collection lines on our rehab projects. You don't have any requirements that require the development to have those. That is a conversation we had with the developer, if they were planning on implementing those or not planning on implementing sump pump collection at this time. We've had a conversation about, maybe that could still be something that's funded underneath the TIF and added to the project. How we do that, we kinda gotta look at probably the cost of what that would be and whether we can fit it into the TIF dollars. But that was a conversation, and that's spelled out as an item here, just so you guys are all of the same understanding that, there's not gonna be any sump pump collection systems built into development at this time, but we're still evaluating that.
So is the backyard drainage gonna be sufficient for?
Yeah, I mean, the backyard drainage will be designed like most subdivisions where they'll have channels that'll convey, the runoff from the systems. Lennox obviously doesn't have a lot of terrain to work with, so there are some areas that might,
It's better terrain, it's better
Yeah,
terrain.
better up there, and we get it pretty flat. So there's probably some areas that could benefit from a sump pump collection system. Again, but we're evaluating that as we move through here. And if we can fit that into the TIF, I think that's probably some money well spent.
Do you have a ballpark of what that costs per block?
No, I don't, and we've actually been working with Kelly a little bit to help us evaluate that, so. As we work through, the next step after preliminary plan is engineering submittal, so that's kind of the next step we're trying to work through, and we'll work through those things in more detail.
I assume it makes more sense to do it on the front side versus trying to put it in at a later time.
There's a couple school of thoughts there. You could go in and put sump pump collections everywhere, and now you've got this big system that you've gotta maintain, where maybe you end up putting them where you don't necessarily need them. Sometimes there's a benefit to waiting, because you see where all the problem areas are, and then you can go and target those areas with the sump pump collection system.
Where you need them.
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
I don't know yet. I have to think about it. I tend to, coming back later is hard because of the backyards, and if we're gonna propose them in the backyards and now there's landscaping and all these things back there, then it becomes challenging. If there's certain areas that look obvious that would benefit, then I would suggest trying to put it in right away.
And is it something where, like, maybe one block needs it, but the other one doesn't?
Yeah.
I mean, is that,
You could definitely end up with that, yeah. I'm just gonna go backtrack a little bit. So we talked about the supplementary provisions, the expectations for city reimbursement. Right now, the developer's not anticipating any reimbursements. If we came along and wanted to upsize a sewer line or upsize a water line, that'd be something that would get listed. And that's basically how they generated that note, is if there is something like that comes along through this engineering submittal process, that they would ask to get compensated for that oversizing, which is very typical on subdivisions. In fact, it probably sparks a policy that we need to get in place in Lennox, because I don't think we have an oversizing reimbursement policy in place at the moment. So that's something that we're gonna be working on with city staff. Ownership and maintenance of improvements in all the streets, all the infrastructure that's built is ultimately gonna be turned over to the city for your guys' maintenance. Sometimes when you get into a subdivision, there might be a private street here and there, they're not proposing anything of that matter, so we just wanted to make sure those are identified. Wetland mitigation, we talked about that a little bit. There are a few areas of mitigation that need to occur, and we'll find out if I'm not sure if they're proposing to mitigate it off-site or somewhere on-site. They're working through that, I'm sure, right now. Impacts the floodplain, we don't have any, there's not a recorded floodplain out there right now, but there are some areas that we're finding that are maybe gonna come into the floodplain in the future, so I was just talking to Kelly about that. We'll be working through that as well. But really not much of an impact there, I don't think. We talked about Juniper, the connection to Boynton Avenue. There is also, if you look at Milwaukee Avenue, is the northern east-west street that ties into Highway 17. If you look close, you can see that there's a gap between this property and the highway, so there's about 30 feet there that Strausser still own. And so the developer's working on getting that right away so you can make that connection. And he's explained underneath that general note of Some pump collection systems we talked about. The open space contributions, all the green areas are the areas that they're proposing to dedicate for public use. There's a requirement in the subdivision regs that they have to dedicate, I believe, 5% of the land that they're developing. So those are the areas that they're proposing to dedicate. Some areas will be used for detention. Those areas are meant to drain out completely after rain event, dry. With the, we wanted to make sure we had a good connection, urge the connection out to that independent 60-foot connection, and that's on the upper end of that green area where it would be probably best suited for a park if you guys choose to put some equipment in there. Let's see. The roadway geometrics, everything meets the standard. The developer has proposed to, once they get out there and start moving dirt around, to do their geotechnical testing then. So they'll determine what the dirt's bearing capacities are out there at that time, and then if they need to modify these sections, they'll do that then. But pretty straightforward there. Sanitary sewer system, we are investigating the lift station. All this area drains to the lift station that's on Highway 17 just north of the railroad tracks. And so we need to make sure that can handle the subdivision. We've done some preliminary work out there, and we feel it can handle most of it, but we're not quite certain it can handle all of it. So if there's something that, if it can't handle all of it, there might be some upgrades that need to happen at that lift station. We've talked with the developer. Those upgrades could qualify as part of the TIF, but it might end up having to be a city project of some sort, but paid through the TIF. We just wanted to make sure that that's pointed out, that's any upgrades of that is not considered in the development right now.
Cause that's only a 10-inch according to when they put 17 in, or we did 17.
Yeah, it's more it's the pumps.
Okay.
We gotta make sure the pumps are sized right.
When they proposed the development behind Jerry's, there's supposed to be 170 houses in there, and we were told that lift station would handle that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it very well might handle that load, but until we get our arms around it and know what's in there, I don't know where we're at with it. But that'll come with this engineering process that we go through. Streetlight system, we had some discussions with the developer just on bringing power into the development. Every town does it a little different, it sounds like. But Excel's your provider. You have a maintenance agreement with them. At this point, we're not proposing anything above than what the minimum standard is out there. So basically, like your street lights will probably be a wood direct buried pole, unless for some reason you guys wanted something more than that, aluminum pole or whatever other options they might have. Then that would be something that would probably go on top of your maintenance agreement with Excel. And the developers coordinating gas and communication lines with American, Vast, and Winco. We'll probably see some more of that as we move through the engineering plans. Other than that, the rest of the sheets just give you a general layout of the street system, utilities, the drainage, and the storm sewer calcs will come with engineering. So we asked them to give us just a broad idea of how things are going to drain, where they might have some storm sewer, just a preliminary layout at this stage. But then we'll get more detail as we go through the engineering signals. That's where we'll get all the drainage calcs and those types of things.
So that will help you decide to where you need sub pump lines in?
Yeah, we'll probably get into that conversation a little deeper. How big the detention pond needs to be, that'll come through the drainage calcs. That's what we end up looking at pretty close. Where we'll end up with inlets in the streets and those types of things.
Could I ask Kelly a question? Couple things I get I've got about 5 people call on lots about lot price, but those are different sizes. When they can purchase a lot, and then we talked earlier about allowing other builders in some of that space. Is that all? Can you answer some of those now, or is it too early to tell? Or?
It's really to tell on lot prices just because we're going to have approval and construction plans. I don't have bids out or nothing.
Okay.
So the pricing is going to be tough. So about that for the lot price and availability, it's all based on the weather. We do plan on moving dirt over there, assuming the grading gets started and everything works out. Ideally, we'd have, you know, in a perfect world, I'll have asphalt out there yet this year, and some of it in a perfect world, so then that's, you know, I wouldn't be able to close or sell a lot until I had accessibility to it. So that's a close time, and then, regarding other builders, yes, it's open for the public.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Call the question?
Motion?
We make motion.
Yep.
And we second.
Okay, now, all in favor?
Aye.
Disapproving, say
Aye.
aye. Motion carries 5-1. Okay, we move on to manufactured home park license inspections.
Mayor, I'm gonna head home, so.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mitch. Just a note for council, I noticed as I was sitting here that the memos for the action items weren't posted, so I'm adding those as we go, if you need to review those. Manufactured home park license inspections, you have in front of you the final 2 inspections that were conducted, manufactured home park license updates this year. Dakota Avenue Apartments, it's not readily apparent from this inspection form, but that's the one at Park Drive. Just west of Westerman Park on Elm. So I think that's just off 7th, or South 7th. I don't think any real surprises here. You know, I do have a concern, particularly on the grading, in that there's a low spot right about in the center of this manufactured home park that it's surprisingly devoid of standing water this year, but most years, you know, I've talked to a few residents, they've had some mosquito and pest problems in there that I think could be mitigated by filling that in and improving some of the drainage there. So again, not very many surprises. I think overall, you know, the inspection went as expected. There certainly are some items to fix here. The owners have been in touch with me about a couple of these items. They talked to me about a sign last week. They've not had a sign there, and that's expressly stated in our ordinances that you must have that there. So, the second one was at Long Creek Manufactured Home Park. Again, not many surprises here either. I think most folks who have been to Long Creek know it's well kept, and I think it's fair to say they run a tight ship over there. The items that are noted on individual units are generally pretty minor. You know, there's a couple of areas where there are, you know, holes in the siding, just damage that was made to the siding. So, you know, we certainly worry about that. I don't recall if we had any skirting issues noted. There may have been a couple. But I'll have Greg, our building inspector, come up and talk a little bit about some of the things he saw, and I'll have a few photos up there too.
So I just produced a little cheat sheet for everybody that wanted. I did just sanitize my hands, if anybody's super worried about that. I just wanted everybody to know what the basis was, or kind of what, you know, we're all about codes to a certain extent, so I just wanted to know everybody know where the codes are coming from and what they say, so basic, you know, top 3 on there are what you guys have adopted, your Lennox municipal and city zoning ordinances, as well as the IRC, or National Residential Code. That's got an appendix in it concerning manufactured housing, used as dwellings, the International Property Maintenance Code, and then HUD is referenced in 2 of those above. So anyway, and then the rest down below, I just kind of referenced the Lennox municipal ordinances, Title 12, manufactured homes, the fire protection, Lennox zoning, HUD housing inspection manual. That thing's actually 210 pages long. Talks about gas meters and supply lines is one of the, I kind of focused on the gas lines just because that's one of the major issues. So I just kind of given you almost a rabbit or a crumb trail of what I have to go through to find out what the rules are, what's the law, what am I supposed to be enforcing. Anyway, And then, of course, a lot of these codes refer to the ASTM, and then, so that's another aspect that you've got to look up. And then there is a code, the 2018 International Fuel Code on the next sheet, that talks a little bit more about copper alloy tubing. The only section that's really got, and part of the issue with what came up was, I don't know, can we pull up a picture?
It's on the share drive, so I can't pull it on my iPad.
So on the last page, just go take a look at the last page. I've got some
Denise
examples
is gonna try and send it to me.
of pictures. It's got an unprotected gas line that's crimped there in the upper left-hand corner. You can see that that's basically just a 90-degree and a half-inch copper. So that's part of what I was flagging. What they've got there is from the meter set, which is on all of them that I saw were mounted properly. Out of that meter set comes a half-inch copper line that they did a field bend on. That's 12 to 18 inches, which is appropriate. But then on many of those, they're unprotected. So a mower going by, a weed eater going by, a kid driving by on a bicycle or whatever can hit those. And so we failed all of them that were out in the field. A lot of them in Longview are closer up against the house and within a planting bed, and thus protected from that kind of activity, so we pass those. So just so it's clear to you guys that's one of the issues. It's not something that's been enforced in the past, is my understanding, and so that's part of the problem. And then below that, I've given you basically our base inspection. I don't know if you guys have actually pulled it up and seen what the inspection was based on. So that first section is basically the individual units. So that list of items from the gas and meter electrical on down is what I took 100 and whatever pages of HUD and the other inspections that I pulled up that were, 7 pages long, a lot of them. And I condensed all that down to these items, thinking this is, to me, the major either beautification, zoning, ordinances, or life safety issues. And so just kind of set it at that. So it's, the creation of this is definitely on me, and I just took a stab at it. And then the bottom one is the development. So there's some that don't have park signs and on and on and on.
So the unprotected meter sets are the ones to the west that don't have trailers by them right now?
All of them had some. Yeah, all 4 parks had some, partly because when you're moving those trailers in and out, typically on your house, you got it mounted to your, right? On a trailer park, you can't do that. They've got to be distanced from wherever the pad's at, understandable. They were all buried, I didn't dig any up, it's 12 inches. There weren't really too many other issues, but to me, because of that, and I didn't go take 30 pictures or anything like that, but some of them are fine. It's obviously that they've been there for, who knows, a decade and aren't damaged, you know what I mean? So you could call it a minor element, or you could look at it and go, it just takes one to have something happen. So
I would just say, I work for the gas company.
Yep.
And you won't find a trailer park in probably South Dakota that has meter sets protected, other
Right.
than being closer to the house where they would be protected.
Yep.
Otherwise, you
There
won't.
were a few that had, fences around them, little chicken wire and stuff like that. I did talk to your installer at the co-op. He said on some of them, he'd be willing to come back. The ones he installed within the last year or two, quote unquote, he'd be willing to come back and install that PVC. I thought maybe we could just, rip some PVC, it just only needs to be about 3/4 of an inch, so that it'll fit on the pipe, so you don't have to actually shut anything off. You just sleeve it if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Or, again, you guys, as the council, obviously make that final determination about what's required or not. So, but yeah, he said that there was, because we haven't adopted the International Fuel Code, but then if you actually go to HUD and they reference ASTM, they reference the Fuel Code, International Building Code, they say all applicable standards,
Right.
but it's not per se. So you're absolutely right. Nobody typically enforces it.
Right.
So, but
Do you feel like it's important that we enforce it?
I think it's a pretty good idea. If you can, even if it's new installations moving forward or whatever, if you look at that crimped line and you just, you know what I mean? It just, there's,
Yeah, no,
And
thank you for creating this first.
that's
Scroll
protected.
down a little bit.
That's protected by that bollard,
Right there.
Right there.
Right, so somebody just stepped on it. That's not a mower or anything. I think somebody maybe just was even using that as a means to shut off the gas to the unit. So maybe I wish I had shown you some other photos, but there are some that look like that. I mean, again, they're in the field where somebody's obviously trying to mow up against them or weed against them. And this is a K copper. It's a thicker wall.
Yep.
You're not gonna hit it with a weed eater once and have it,
Right.
start leaking gas. It's tough stuff. But
Preventative.
In 20 years.
it is, right. Well, or just stuff like this, or, you know, and again, is it an outlier that you're worrying about, or one time? You know what I mean?
Right.
How many explosions, or how many fuel, well, I mean, just, seriously, I mean, that's a gas line.
Our goal is zero.
Right, you don't usually see, you know what I mean?
Zero residential explosions.
Zero explosions, please.
I mean, everything else in the code book, when you're poaching through a wall or anything, is about abrasion resistance and sleeving, you going underneath the foundation. These codes spell all of that stuff out. This, they leave pretty vague.
Yeah. I would just say they have probably too much copper, too much slack there probably.
Right. Just nobody really spells it out, other than that one place in the International Fuel Gas Code, and that one, you even have to go to an interpretation of that. So that fuel gas code just says, protected. That's 411.1.2, protection against damage. Connectors and tubing shall be installed so as to be protected against physical damage. Well, they don't say what that means.
So in this report, all you've got is a check mark by where it says gas electrical meters. You don't say what needs to be repaired.
I don't really, no, and some of the last two.
So how are you supposed to repair it if they don't know what needs to be repaired?
They can ask.
We had an exit conference with everybody that was at the inspection.
Wayne, is that true?
We have an exit, but I still don't know what I'm supposed to do to fix it.
Protect it.
Protect it.
So, the way I understand it is we want to protect it so something can't
If I may,
damage it, correct?
we have an installer that installs most of the homes in Sioux Falls, all our latest homes here in Long Creek Park. He did 100 in Omaha last year, and I called him. He's certified electrically, he's certified as a plumber, he's certified as a gas installer, gas line installer. And he has never, ever, he does 200 to 300 homes a year, has never had this problem anywhere.
He's the guy at the co-op that I talked to.
No, he's not.
Oh, I thought he was.
No.
It's not the co-op installer that you gave me his name?
I gave you his name, he did a home, but not for us.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about Brian, from H&H Mobile Homes. That's all he does, is mobile homes.
Right, but I would argue that this probably wasn't installed like this, right?
The what?
This wasn't installed like
That's
this.
not in my park.
I understand, I get that, I'm just using this as an example.
No, that I totally agree with.
Yeah.
The pipe is bent.
Well, I would think anywhere where there's that exposed pipe like that, you would put landscaping block or a fence.
You have no exposed pipes on your home?
What?
You have no exposed gas line pipes on your home?
They're right beside the house though.
Well, I don't think so. I guess. I've never
Typically
looked.
on a residential home, you're gonna see the exposed pipes,
It's fixed.
in the landscaping, it's affixed to the
It's
house.
tied to the foundation,
Yeah.
right?
The meter's attached to the house.
Right.
The meter's going out and in 6 inches.
Right.
But,
So
that's not right or wrong, that's got nothing, that's.
Right.
No,
But you're our building inspector, and if you say it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. I mean, that's what you're.
Don't kill the messenger.
I mean, that's just your
But
job.
still, when Wayne needs to know what's wrong. Does piping need to be put on? Does something need to be put around the meter? It doesn't say that. It just says fail.
Well,
Well, that's-
if you pull off the International Fuel Gas Code, it says connections and tubing shall be installed as to be protected against physical damage.
So
So
what?
everybody out in Long Creek Park has got this? Yes, no? No.
I'm just.
It's the responsibility of the installer and the license holder to ensure that everything is up to code. Now, we will walk through to the extent that we can with anybody that needs to know this. But anybody that's installing any of this, whether it's water, sewer, gas, electric, it's their responsibility to be up to speed on those codes.
So, and again, I don't wanna muddy the waters too much, but in their defense, the city of Lennox has not adopted the International Fuel Gas Code.
Correct.
But if you start digging into HUD requirements, right, and even the International Residential Code, you get to that point where that's the standard that they want you to meet, but they don't actually say you've got to meet it.
Well,
So
well,
it's-
this
it
is
vague.
kind of a first run through of this checklist too. It's the
Correct.
first time. I mean,
Yeah.
You bet.
we just gotta figure out a solution and.
It's not make a mountain out of a molehill.
Yep, so what I'm hearing is.
Well, I want him to tell Wayne on each property, because if you look through there, there's 10 of them, what needs to be taken care of. Does a fence need to be put around it? Does the piping need to be
Well,
done?
let's have that discussion then.
So part of it was until last week, right?
Settle down.
Part of it until last week, I was still trying to determine from state fire marshal, the local fire marshal, the gas company, right? I was trying to find out what was applicable and what wasn't. So I'm new, to me, that was a danger, and so I just put it on the list and said, okay, right? So now we kind of know if council approves this aspect or this element, right, then I'll know what's required, and I can portray that information to him or the rest of the people saying, here's what we've decided is required to protect the gas line. Here's a couple options. You want another one, then please call me. You know, I'm open. You want a cinder block wall, you want, you know, chicken wire with steel posts, you want PVC. That's up to me ultimately, unfortunately, in some ways to say whether that's acceptable or not, but.
So you'll be having these discussions with the owners and that?
If they request it, Wayne called, I met with him for an hour and a half, and we went through every single unit and talked about him, about what was wrong. He said, well, I don't even know where this is at, so I went back and I took some pictures, and then sent him an email and said, here's the problem, or, oh, this has already been fixed. We had a deck that they put up a rail in between the time that we did the inspection and failed it, and so I sent him pictures and said, no problem here, take that off your list. So I'm more than willing to do that sort of thing.
I know
Yes,
it's not,
thank you.
I know it's not easy when you've gotta be
Yep.
the deliverer, but I do thank you for your efforts in
Yep.
doing that.
Yeah, I think this checklist is great. If we use this for every inspection, I think it would be fairly easy moving forward.
Yep, and it makes it uniform, it makes it
Yeah.
equal amongst all the
Fair.
property owners, and it's a good
That's
start.
fine, but we still need to know what is going to correct it. You
Yep.
want us to have it corrected by June 30th.
Well,
How are we going to, you have to adopt something first.
Specifically for the gas line, Wayne, is that what you're
Well,
talking
that's the
about?
main thing, we've got
Okay.
10 of them in my park, and we wanna comply. We want it, but we need to know what we have to do.
Well, what do the ones look like that passed?
The same as these,
They're
The
the
same
exact
installer?
same?
No,
I can
They
take
just
you
have
over-
landscaping or closer.
They've got landscaping or some other
I
form
can
of
take
protection.
you over and show you the ones
Right.
that were installed all by the same guy.
Well, it doesn't matter who installed
Yeah, it does, because he
them.
has to
No,
do
it
it right.
doesn't.
Yeah,
okay,
it does.
I think that discussion can be had and clarified some of Wayne's questions specifically about it.
My suggestion for council tonight, if I could, would be to offer direction to our building inspector in terms of, to what extent should we be enforcing this measure. I personally feel this is, we're talking gas lines in particular. That is top of the line life safety issues. And to me, making sure that those things are protected would be top of the list items for getting protection from any mowers, trimmers, whatever it might be. So to me, having the Schedule 40 PVC surrounding for a certain length above ground level would be appropriate in my mind. Also, relatively low cost option.
Okay. I don't mind that. Sam, this is your field in the way.
I think we'd probably be out of line actually to ask for anything more than what's already there. I mean, I could see maybe going forward, but we'd be the only municipality in the state probably with something like that, honestly.
But when it comes to putting that wrapping around the pipes, you're the only people that can touch that. Homeowners can't touch that. Is that correct?
Well, this stuff that he's talking about is actually the park owns it because
It's after the
it's after the meter. I mean, there's probably examples that are similar to that picture, that I could see something needs to be done there, obviously, but
So if there's issues with the copper piping after the meter where it's kinked like that,
it's,
but just making sure that our direction should be to get those fixed, obviously,
right,
but not necessarily do protection.
right. Unless it's obvious that, you know, there's a driveway right next to it, or there's definitely traffic right there close, then it makes
Obvious
sense.
risk.
Well, on something like that where the pipe's kinked, isn't the whole some pipe repair gonna have to happen?
Well, they're probably not gonna get, this winter, they're probably not gonna have heat, because they're not gonna get enough flow.
But I mean, shouldn't,
Oh, yeah. it-
But you're saying fix those, right? Sam?
Yeah, absolutely.
well, what are we looking at for this PVC cost? Like, what's the cost to a homeowner? $500?
12-foot sticks, probably $6.
And that's all it takes is $6?
Well, and then you
Well,
cut
then you
that,
cut it.
you only need about 24 inches. It's gotta go 3 to 6 inches
So about
down.
$2 a house?
And most, I mean, to me, if they were 18 inches above grade, and then you've gotta rip that, right? So you gotta have an opening in that circle
Right.
to be able to slip around that pipe so that you don't have to disconnect it, expose the gas, sleeve it on, rebend it. It'd be a lot quicker and easier. Now, another alternative is some landscaping rock and gravel in there so the weeds don't grow up, or, I mean, there were some that were fenced in, so you just a couple metal stakes and then some almost chicken wire just wrapped around those stakes, right? So that the mower wouldn't hit it, the kid couldn't chase a ball in there. So there's options, right, to protecting that pipe. The PVC to me would be easiest, because you just take that and you rip it and slip it on, put a block on it, beat it down in the ground 6 inches or so, maybe a little zip tie just so it can't slip, fall off. It'd be quick. But that's not my call.
So roughly about $10 a house.
Yeah, if you said
At the
$10 a
max.
piece, right,
Yeah,
At the max.
$10 a unit.
Yeah.
as a guess.
Materials and labor.
Supplies, yeah.
Right.
I don't know that that would necessarily even make sense though, because I mean, to me, that's creating another shear point by having that
It's
plastic.
out of the 40.
Yeah. It's good for 40.
You can
And
still
it's-
bump it, but
Right,
yeah, it's
and
just.
that's not gonna hold, I mean, you can hit it with a lawnmower, it's gonna break the plastic pipe before it's gonna break the copper probably. So is it really?
Maybe some common sense when you're mowing.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
Well, I mean, that's kinda like an, oh crap, I broke something with
That's
the
the whole
mower.
thing.
Yeah, well, common sense is lost a little bit. these days,
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
maybe some landscaping.
yeah. Then you don't gotta mow by it.
We,
So where we at for direction?
I mean, I would say, Wayne, educate your people that are renting from you and the seriousness of the gas lines and the other mobile parks as well, you know. Let them know how serious it is when you're ramming into the gas
Well,
pipe.
that's no problem,
Right.
but for failure on this inspection, he didn't say,
Yeah.
check this out, it said fail.
Right.
And we'll, and
And
No,
this
it's
is a-
because it
this is-
didn't pass his inspection that he put together, that we asked him to put together.
Why are you different than Nebraska,
It's okay to be better.
any state?
you're talking to an
Well,
insurance guy now.
it's just anybody that has.
It's okay to be better.
International fuel code. So if somebody is in,
Are you taking that from HUD?
partly, you bet.
Well, there's, my park is the only one in town that I would say 90% of the homes definitely will pass HUD inspection.
Right.
The homes in your other parks will not pass HUD inspection, so how can you apply things there, but not here?
This was applied to all 4 inspections.
Same inspection for every place, so there was no.
I agree, but I say, how can you apply HUD rules when these homes won't pass, period?
We're trying to get him there.
I think this
You're
is,
not gonna get them there, you don't understand HUD inspection.
Well, so the Title 12, that's why I put some in, I can maybe give you one of these, but, so even in your Title 12 manufactured homes under the Lennox municipal ordinances, okay, says acceptable national standards. The International Fire Code
You would
is,
send me those.
I haven't sent you this, I just created this today. So this is what we're talking about, this is what's in front of the council members.
Then you need to adopt them so we can apply to them.
so,
Well, I think, and that's what he's asking for tonight, direction, whether.
Yep.
whether we're going to try and adopt something.
You can't apply it now if you haven't adopted.
We can apply it as other codes that we have adopted, reference that code specifically.
So do we need a motion to approve the inspection form, or what are we looking at?
This isn't down as an action item. The only thing we need tonight is a sense of the council into which direction they would like to move with this.
I think it's great. That's my.
Okay, Jackson's a no, right?
Hmm?
What do you think of this?
Well, if we get it before us and in ordinance form, it's fine. But he's failing these and there's no ordinance for it.
Okay. Billy?
No, I think it's good.
Okay. Chad Wolf?
Well, I guess I'm a little confused on what we're,
Yeah.
I mean, what are we saying is good or not good? We don't have an ordinance specifically. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is all about, we did an inspection, it's the first time we've done it this way, which is great, by the way. Before, we didn't have anything like this. He's noticed some issues.
Mm-hmm.
I think Wayne's concern was you maybe didn't feel you had the direction on how to resolve them, right, Wayne?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, I don't know what we're voting yes or no on. I think we just need to simply apply some common sense here and give them some direction. Are we gonna let it go? Unless, like Sam said, it's one that's kinked over, yeah, those need to be fixed. And educate the owners, and we have to form an ordinance going forward.
Yeah.
So be it, we can't do that tonight,
No.
I don't think.
No, this is just the
Am I wrong?
direction that we're gonna go.
No. No, and if the council wishes to adopt the fuel code,
National Fuel Code.
Yeah,
that certainly is at the discretion of the council. We do feel that with the references made in the adopted building codes that we have, that this is enforceable.
Enforceable,
Yes.
right. So I
So,
guess,
do we know roughly how many mobile homes there are in Lennox currently?
I'd have to run that tally from before.
I mean, 150, 25
There's
ballpark.
30 in Rye Park.
Yeah, I would say you're looking at maybe 60 total, 65.
I guess if you want my opinion, we go with Sam's recommendation for the time being.
Mhm.
Communicate that with the park owners. If it's a problem, let's get those problem ones fixed. And then we need to work with, you know, our building inspector and the park owners to come up with a viable solution
Yeah.
going forward.
Okay.
On the non-problem ones right now.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Okay. Rock?
Yeah, same, I echo that.
All right. So it sounds like the majority are, let's get the problem ones that are kinked or damaged in some way corrected. Those will be the ones that wouldn't pass, and then we'll look at making the protection and view that later. This is just a discussion to find out how it's gonna go forward. It's been a good discussion.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Don't we have a boatload of PVC pipe down in the park shop that's?
We
I mean,
do.
that we can make.
Unfortunately, most of it is not Schedule 40, and it's about 10 inches around.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think overall, these inspections have gone, last year was a first run at it. We certainly didn't have this form created by then, this checklist. I think overall, last year turned out okay. This year, in terms of having an enforceable checklist of what needs to be done in each manufactured home park has been above and beyond what I expected for this spring. So I just want to commend Greg for his work on this so far.
Template's awesome.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is.
And
Thank
it's-
you, Greg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, if nothing else, it brings a lot of things to light that haven't been for a long time.
It just makes you wonder how long those gas lines have been kinked.
There's a lot of them, I mean.
I worry more about how long it is until they blow up. Thank you.
Revised code enforcement policies and procedures.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a relatively easy one. As we discussed last year's budget process, the police department's going to be taking over a majority of code enforcement duties in 2020. Thankfully, they were able to step in that role with the addition of a fifth officer. Even if we were not doing that, looking back at the policies we enacted last year, they just have not been as effective. particularly when it comes to a lengthy enforcement process. It just takes too long. And some properties that I've been dealing with for a year now, and I think we just need to be able to move those a little bit faster along, especially in relatively easy cases. Now, some of these are more complicated and will require us to take legal action, but some of these, just following the steps a little faster, I think could do us a lot of good. So the draft that's in front of you tonight makes clear that the enforcement procedures should come through the code official, so either, which is designated to be me at this point, or routed through Lincoln County Dispatch, and there's a specific reason for that. So when somebody has an issue that they note on, let's say it's lack of appropriate siding, a whole side of a house doesn't have siding on it, which is an actual open issue right now. That can either come to me, and then I route it to dispatch, or the person that notices it should route it through dispatch. Now, that can either come from a resident, but it would also apply to anybody on council. Again, you can send it to me, I'm going to route it through dispatch. Now, the reason for that is that we have an accurate report that comes through for the PD. If they have a good paper trail of who sent them and where, and what sent them and where, it makes the enforcement actions far easier down the line. So if there are issues with, a property that you notice, again, feel free to call me, but I'm still going to have to go through that process myself. And you're more than welcome to call that non-emergency number as well, and go that route. That's one of those things I think is gonna take us time to get used to, because I'll get stopped on the street, somebody may mention something in the front office, I may get a call from a council member. This is gonna be a change, and it'll take us a little bit of time to adapt to that, I think. It also shortens the time frame for enforcement. Several steps were eliminated, essentially requiring compliance much faster than was otherwise available. But it also makes clear that abatement and mitigation remains the responsibility of the code official in consultation with the city attorney. When it comes to, lining up the work and working with the city attorney to ensure that our fees and our costs and of that mitigation are covered by the property owner, that's something that should continue to fall on my office and on the city attorney, and not with the police department, since it really becomes a court action at that point. So with that, I would recommend a motion to approve the revised code enforcement policies and procedures.
So moved.
Second.
Wolf, Sam. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. F, malt beverage beer licenses.
Thank you, Mayor. We did get in all of the malt beverage licenses. They all are renewed, or renewals. There's no new ones. The only thing I'm waiting on is Casey's to send me their checks. Apparently it got lost in the mail, the application, and so when I called her, she apologized and got the application to me immediately, and then mailed the checks the next day, which was Thursday. So I would have thought I would have had them by today, but so otherwise everything else is in order, and everybody has it, I think, on your board docs. So when you make the motion, if you wanted to make it contingent upon payment from Casey's, that would be the only thing.
I'll make a motion to approve upon the contingent that we get those checks from Casey's.
Okay, Brian made a motion. Need a second?
Second.
Chad. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Revised FY fiscal year 2020 budget.
Thank you, Mayor. You'll have in front of you a draft budget that the Finance Committee went through. It was last week, 2 weeks ago perhaps? 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago. That takes into account some potential impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. So the biggest impacts would be to sales tax by far, but the property tax projections could also change. That's one that I still wonder if we're going to get hit on that one or not. But given as that one would be significantly less, the property tax changes would really only go down by 54,000 as opposed to the 75 to 80,000 that we project for sales tax. So that was only a 5% reduction in the property taxes. So the total anticipated loss in revenue was $145,000. Now since that time, we've had numbers coming to us from the Department of Revenue, and we've got our anticipated payments for sales tax, and we appear to be doing just fine. So what I want to make sure we have in front of you tonight is this draft option available to enact should the need arise at some point later in the future. I would also suggest we rename it from what I've named it in this this version.
That's a good word.
Yes. As applicable as it may be, it's not the correct terminology for this setting. So that's my mistake. It was pointed out as an error earlier. So, but yeah, we make a number of changes in here. All of our notes are in here as well, so you can take a look at what changes we would make and where. The biggest changes, I think, overall would be to travel, which at this point, it really doesn't look like we're going to do much this year anyway. All of our conferences, even my conference in October, has been canceled at this point. So, you know, there may be online options, and we'll pursue those if we can. But, you know, the only training that we really didn't cut back on was water and sewer with at least 2 new employees there. We want to make sure that we maintain that and appropriate coverage. So. Again, I don't want to give the feeling that the sky is falling. For some communities it is. There are some communities that rely very heavily on sales taxes that are probably looking at cuts of up to 50% of their general fund. I'm thankful that we aren't in that position, though it would be nice to have more sales taxes in town. In this case, it actually helps us out a little bit and protects us from what's happening. So. No action recommended tonight, just something to have available and review at your convenience in case we need to enact it.
Any questions? Okay, moving on to livestock permit applications.
In another, what I can only assume is impact from COVID-19, we have 2 additional chicken licenses that came to us in the past couple of weeks. Both of those are in front of you. First one is for Katie Hartman at 609 West 4th. The property is actually owned by Bassick Rentals. The applicant has spoken with the landlord and is totally has received their approval for it. A picture of the coop is on the second page, as well as some screenshots of discussions between the owner and the neighbor, and the owner and the tenant, excuse me. The second permit is for Susan Carlson at 813 South Elm. Good plan there, no issues that I've noted. Again, hens only will be required on this. I did have a picture of this coop. See if I can pull it up here.
More so than the sketch.
Yeah. And you know what, this is to the other one. But the sketch itself, I talked to the owner about the construction of the roof was one of our concerns, because we want to ensure that we're consistent with the building codes overall, which you know, outlines not to use steel roofing in some cases. So I would recommend approval on both of these livestock permits.
So moved.
Second.
Jackson, Chad Riley, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries 6-0. Aye, swim pool pay application number 9.
This is very likely our second to last pay application for the pool project. This represents the majority of the remaining work on the new swimming pool. Staff conducted the training and completed a walkthrough of the pool facility last week. We noted all of our remaining concerns to Carruthers. Many of those issues have already been fixed. I believe Justin's doing a walkthrough again tomorrow with them to do a final check. on the, really the touch-ups. I mean, everything else is pretty apparent already, so. Did run into one issue last week, when we were trying to get the burner started up, or the water heater started up. There was an issue with the gas line that's since been resolved with Mid-American, responded very promptly and took care of it very quickly. I think they poured the concrete back down today, so. We have received a certificate of substantial completion. I didn't want to propose that tonight until all of those items are checked off that list to our satisfaction, but I anticipate having that for council at the second meeting in May, just prior to the opening. So recommend a motion to approve the pay application line.
What did they do with that, line into the pool or with the fill? Wasn't there some problem with the water line going into the pool that wasn't?
Yeah, we had, it was the main supply line that came from the pump pit into the bathhouse. I don't know what the issue with it was. There was a restriction, something inside of that line was not working correctly, and it wasn't pumping well enough, we weren't getting the flow we needed. So what they had proposed was, going up, so that additional line is actually underneath the slab. So to avoid breaking up that slab and pulling out that line that way, Carruthers and their plumber had proposed going up and through the chemical room into the bathhouse instead. That plan worked fine for us. They wanted to do PVC. We required copper for that line since that was the original spec. We did ask them to move the line just a little bit to allow us a little more storage room on the wall, but it seems to be working well and doing well. So in exchange, they did offer to winterize that twice for us and extend the warranty.
Need a motion to approve it? So moved.
Second.
Chad. Any further discussion? Chad Riley.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Billy.
Aye.
Sam.
Aye.
Brock.
Aye.
Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Swimming pool change order number 6.
I pulled up the wrong one there. Change order number 6 is probably our last change order for amenities. I don't anticipate having a whole lot more added to this after this change order, given the other projects we have going on, or other additions to the pool, I should say. So this is really the last of the amenities to be installed in the pool. The first of them was a large umbrella for the parent bench. If any of you have been over there, anybody who was there for the filling, I think probably 3 or 4 of you were there for that. There's a large umbrella that can go into the sleeve that's tapped into that parent bench right by the child play structure. So that was, I believe that was $5,500. I don't have the order pulled up right now. The other amenity was a floating oriole bird that'll be anchored, I would say, just to the north of the swimming lanes. If you look down the pool, you can see where those anchor points are. There's 2 or 3 anchor points down in there. Sounds like it's actually a bit of a challenge to install. So Justin has been voluntold to be on top of the oriole while somebody's trying to anchor it down to the bottom. So
You got air tanks?
Can we video this?
hopefully the heater is working by that time. And we don't have any cases on our
I think we shut it off.
Hopefully Foss has the cameras going for this.
I didn't anticipate having a polar plunge, but we may have it after all. So these were recommended by Ms. Mauer, the pool committee, and staff concur with that recommendation. We recommend motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Everything's in budget with all this?
Yeah, so, the bond was originally 1.7. What we've gone over that is just change orders for the amenities that have been added. So if you look at the change order itself, the pay app number 9 from the last item, you'll see that, what's broken down there as original contract price and new contract price. That difference is the amenities that were selected by the pool committee, the park and rec board.
Through fundraising.
Through fundraising, correct.
So no additional taxpayer dollars?
No, that's all really done through the fundraising effort.
That's what it was presented to me. All right, Sam?
Aye.
Chad Riley.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Brock.
Aye.
Billy.
Aye.
Chad Wood.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Excuse me.
Wayne.
I'd just like to thank you all for your time and consideration tonight, it's appreciated.
You're welcome, Wayne.
Hey, Wayne.
Okay, swimming pool, security and audio system.
Thank you, Mayor. This was a late addition. Got this late last week and had some discussion with Justin. Had some additional discussion with Brittany Mauer today. Should have had that discussion sooner, quite frankly. Didn't reach out soon enough with that. But I think there's more discussion to have on here. So the system overview that you've got in front of you, the total cost is just less than $10,000. I would like to consider scaling that back a little bit in terms of number of cameras and possibly the landscape speakers. But I'd like to make that determination in discussion and consultation with Ms. Mauer and the pool committee or the park board. I think overall, this project makes sense. This is going to be tied into our existing security system that we have here at the wastewater plant. I do have concerns with, we've had vandalism in the park for years. And I want to make sure that we're protecting this facility to the best extent that we can. So I recommend a motion to approve up to $10,000 for this project.
So moved. Sam.
Second.
Brock. Okay.
So where's this 10,000 coming from?
The portion of it that would be dedicated as, what I would say, the additional pool speakers, the trenching, the stuff that's last on here, that I would really call it an amenity, so that would come from that fundraised dollars. The remaining pieces, which would be, probably $6,000, give or take, that would come from our operating funds under the pool, under the pool fund.
The security system, basically.
Yes, yeah.
And
And the mixer and the initial, yeah, because we do need some of that as safety features for the pool.
Right.
And then this is gonna cost us $36.99 a month plus tax, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Since you're back, I'll give you the chance. What? Say. Motion.
Yeah, you have a motion in a second.
Abstain. Sam.
Aye.
Brock.
Aye.
Chad.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Billy.
Aye.
Okay. 5 to 1 abstain. Abatement of property taxes.
Thank you, Mayor. We received an application from, I believe we actually received it forwarded through the county. This is an abatement of 2 parcels on Juniper Street. So this is actually the 2 vacated plats that will become the future Juniper Street connection, the Countryside Edition. I wasn't here when this happened, but from what I understand, there used to be a house there.
Yep.
That's being vacated, that area is being vacated, that's already, city property essentially. And then the house, to the west that was moved in 2 years ago, finished last year, I think. So it's basically the parcel that's east of that property. City Attorney, Greg Lovin, reviewed and signed the application. I would make a motion to have the mayor, do the same.
So moved.
Second.
Sam. Riley. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Lennox volunteer fire department roster.
Thank you, Mayor. I spoke with Chief Nathan Strasser last week. They had an addition to their fire department roster at their last meeting. They're adding Chris Cooper to their roster. Anytime we have a new addition to either ambulance or fire volunteers, we approve the whole roster again, just to ensure that we've got everything correct. So I would recommend a motion to approve the Lennox Fire Department roster as of 4/29/20.
So moved.
Second.
Sam made the motion.
Yep.
Billy got it.
Give it to Billy.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Okay, police department radio updates.
Mayor, I'm gonna recommend tabling this until the next meeting. Chief Erickson wasn't able to be here with us tonight, and there's a few other things I think we need to follow up on.
Motion to table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 6-0 table. Museum tuck point contract.
Thank you, Mayor. This is actually, I probably should have had this under old business because we did take this up last year, if you'll recall. The Museum, Historical Society received a grant last year to do some tuck pointing on the museum. It's taken some time to actually get that contract worked out. Wasn't done in time for last winter. It is done now. City Attorney Brett Loverin has reviewed and recommends approval. I recommend a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Jackson, Billy. That was just Wayne moving.
Oh, okay.
Discussion.
You said there was a grant received?
Yes,
Do we still have access to those grant dollars even though it's a year later?
We don't have access to it until the project is done. So our share is still a match. I think of 2,500 if I recall. But the grant funds are received post-project.
Okay. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Billy.
Aye.
Jackson.
Aye.
Brock.
Aye.
Sam.
Aye.
Chad Rowdy.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0. Personnel. Executive session.
I only have one very brief item for executive session.
Okay.
So, under legal.
Need a motion to go into.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Take a short break, it's open.
I was gonna ask a question.
Oh.
If are we going under personnel and legal or just legal?
I think we should go under both for just one. Have a very short thing.
Yeah, I didn't really think that I was. I thought it was good. Yeah.
Brock, did you move the second to go into that?
Bowers and Wolf, I think.
Oh, okay. I knew it came from this side, I just didn't know who.